Hello， 大家好，我是利恩。今天的影片非常精彩，我们呢还可以顺便学到一个单字，什么单字呢？就是邪教怎么说？邪教这个英文单字呢叫做 cult， 不是 cut，C-U-L-T， 你可以这样子发音，就是你把那个冷有没有 cold， 那你把它后面改成 t， 那就是 cult。为什么今天好端端的聊到邪教来啊？因为 Charlie Kirk 在这个大学校园里头有一个女学生呢，就上前来跟 Charlie Kirk 辩论。Charlie Kirk 大吃一惊他第一次听到有人这么的说法，就是这个女学生认为美国总统川普所高呼的这个政治口号，我们知道 Mega， 也就是 Make America Great Again， 就是让美国再次伟大。他认为这个 Mega 运动已经变成了一个邪教的组织，怎么会有如此特别创意的看法呢？
这思维可是真挺另类的。
过去民主党 Joe Biden 的许多政策主张我多次都用到非常邪恶来形容，好比说可以给未成年人施打青春期阻断剂，或者是所谓的性别护理手术 Gender Affirming Care， 也就是未成年人只要自认自己有性别焦虑呢，就可以在不经父母家长的同意之下，由政府这边来协助切除乳房或者是睾丸摘除。那更不要说包含像加州的监狱，只要你自认自己是心理性别是女性，男犯人呢就可以申请转往女子监狱，造成加州女子监狱强暴比例大幅攀升。
Oh God, please no, no！
这些过去我都是说非常邪恶的主张或者非常邪恶的政策，但是我也不曾把民主党视作是一个邪教组织。没有想到让美国伟大这个口号呢，居然在左派的觉醒文化学院当中呢，不但听起来不顺耳非常的刺耳，甚至呢还认为根本就是邪教。我们就话不多说，让我们好好的重新来思考如何的定义邪教吧。Let's go。
Statement/question is, would you agree/disagree that the Make America movement, Make America Great movement, again, MAGA movement, is a cult?
No. Why don't you explain to me and the audience what is a cult?
Of course. Okay. Do you know any characteristics of a cult?
Sure. I mean, you could take the Jonestown death cult, of which there was a charismatic leader that constantly lied people, and they took him out of everyday normal life and leads them towards ostracization and cutting off of family ties. Am I getting closer to describing the Democrat Party?
According to the... No. What I'm talking about is MAGA. According to the Bethune Cook University website, characteristics of a cult include isolating members and criticizing them for leaving. Would you say that members of the MAGA movement will criticize others for leaving?
Well, yeah. I mean, but you guys criticize players that transfer out of the University of Tennessee football team. That's not a cult.
Okay, what about the absolute authoritarianism without meaningful accountability?
Okay, so what you're trying to say is that, like, what the leader says, the leader gets, basically?
Yes, Trump.
We have lots of disagreements in the MAGA movement. In fact, I'm more pro-life than the president is. In fact, a lot of people in this audience would have differing views maybe on where the president is at on Israel or Gaza or Ukraine or Russia. In fact, some people in this audience might say the president is not as pro-Second Amendment as they would like. I would argue that we actually have far more intellectual diversity in the MAGA movement than your traditional Democrat Party.
I see where you're going with this and stating that not every person who, I guess, supports Trump is fully supportive of him, but I'm saying the MAGA movement who will agree with him no matter what.
Well, I actually think that there's more depth and complexity to the MAGA movement than you would imagine. A lot of people here who would consider themselves to be part of the MAGA movement, they won't blindly sign on to everything that Trump does. However, they will say that they agree with him 8 out of 10 times or 9 out of 10 times. And so I would say, though, you know what was a cult? What was a cult is what we lived during COVID. During COVID, and allow me to build out the argument that no matter what the CDC or Anthony Fauci would say, you would have the little talking heads on television parrot it back, no matter how insane it was. We must close the schools, 6 feet to slow the spread, wear a mask while showering. Okay, I made that one up. But, I mean, the point being is that far more had characterizations of what a cult would be than the traditional Make America Great Again movement.
Okay, but you could also argue the side that Fox News does the exact same thing, where they just regurgitate everything that the right media is saying, and people on the right will believe anything Fox News says. And I'm not defending CNN. I'm not saying the Democratic Party is perfect. I'm just saying that there is a movement of conservative people who support Trump who will do it no matter what.
Yeah, so I'm trying to get to where you have come to this opinion. I'm trying to understand it because I see something completely different.
I do not use CNN as my news source, by the way, just so you know.
Good for you. Apparently you haven't been in an airport recently because the only people that watch CNN is if you're walking through an airport. So I'm trying to understand where you're coming from, and by your own definition of a cult.
It's not my own. It's a legitimate
fine. So let me ask you a question. A cult would probably convince people to do something that would be against their humanity. Would you agree?
Yes.
A cult would probably get people to do something that they know is wrong, even though they think they should do something as right.
Maybe, because some of these people are brainwashed into believing certain things that they don't actually agree with because they don't have the proper information on it.
So, for example, would you agree that when the Democrats sat during the State of the Union address to not applaud a kid with brain cancer, that is cult-like behavior? Because their leader told them not to do it. I mean,
well, who told them not to?
Exactly. I mean, their leadership told them.
So who's their leader? If
well,
they're a cult,
Chuck
then who's their
Schumer
leader?
or Hakeem Jeffries, they had strict orders, do not stand and applaud for anything Trump does. They told us this.
Yes.
And so then Trump says, hey, can we just have a moment of non-political? Here's DJ Daniel. He's dying of brain cancer. He's now a ceremonial member of the Secret Service. And every Democrat sat with their arms crossed, not even being able to show the humanity. I mean, that's a cult.
Okay. To respond to that is simply one example, and I'm sure you can pull a bunch other out. But, and I'm not saying that what the Democratic Party did that night was correct. I believe that what they were doing was standing against Trump's hypocrisy and his narcissism and his way of like making himself look good by using other people who are marginalized to make himself look good.
So here's my suggestion, and take it for whatever it's worth. Calling the opposition political movement a cult when the other one that you happen to be more allied with is obviously much more of a cult is not helpful.
Okay, then tell me how it's a cult. Tell me how the Democratic Party is a cult compared to MAGA.
I'll give you another I mean, you asked me for more examples.
Yes.
The day of the State of the Union address, all 22 Democrat senators repeated the very same video on social media, mindlessly like robots.
What video?
The video where they said, something is effing out of control and this is not right. You guys all saw that video. Repeating the same incantation with not even like an iota of creativity or ingenuity, like just repeating it like as if they've been hypnotized into a... Got it.
I have not seen that video.
Well, you should. But again, I'm not even the one that is up here throwing around the cult word towards the Democrat Party. I just think it's a supremely rich accusation to say the MAGA movement is part of a cult, when evidently, based on the own standard that you put forward, the Democrat Party embodies those characteristics far more than Republicans or conservatives ever have or ever will.
So one of the main aspects of a cult is a leader, a charismatic leader that people will follow blindly no matter what. The leader of the MAGA movement is Trump. Who are you stating the leader of the Democratic Party is that people will follow blindly without questioning no matter what?
Well, I mean, there's...
and I'm hearing tons of different examples, so that can just tell you there's not one.
Okay, again, so it could be Obama, it could be Rachel Maddow. I mean, the point being is that I don't even think it's the strongest argument to call either party a cult. That's not why I'm up here. I'm simply just playing the same frequency that you're coming at, that based on the definition, the Democrat Party is far more mindless and far more of a Borg, to use a Star Trek analogy, than the Republican Party or the conservative movement. And so, but here's something I do want to ask, though. If you are positing that it is a cult, do you think this entire audience is part of a cult and they don't realize it?
I think that my statement was the Make America Great Again movement is a cult. I'm not saying the conservative party is. I'm saying the far-right MAGA movement is a cult. I will say that I believe in my heart that there are certain people in this group who could be characterized as someone who is in a cult.
Okay. I mean, I think that's insane. And I'm not here to give Democrats advice, but it's so destructive to our politics to call people that just won a national electoral landslide and the national popular vote as part of a cult. Maybe instead it should be, maybe they have better ideas than we do.
Maybe they just... Maybe they had billions of dollars to put into their campaign funding that got them the awareness.
Hold on. I mean, you seem well-intentioned. So who spent more money in this election, Kamala Harris or Donald Trump? It's not even close. It's 3-to-1 more money was spent by Kamala and her affiliated super PACs than Donald Trump.
Do you have the numbers?
Yeah, you can go to opensecrets.org. You can look at all the outside groups, the hard money that Kamala raised, the super PACs that they raised. Democrats, by the way, do you know that 8 out of 10 of the wealthiest counties in America vote Democrat? Do you know the wealthier you are in America, the more likely you are to be a member of the Democrat Party? That the more, if you work with your hands and you don't graduate from college, that you're less likely to be a Democrat. Now, one of your, fellow cult members just screamed at me from the audience saying, well, that's because, they're so educated. Do never conflate everybody, credentials with an education. Just because you have a lot of degrees does not mean you have the most important thing, wisdom. Wisdom is different than a credential. Now, I could tell that you're coming after this from a good perspective. So my last homework assignment for you is this. I want you to go find 5 people with a MAGA hat once this event is over and talk to them. And then I want you to say what you said to me. I want you to first accuse them of being in a cult, because if you can say it to me, you can say it to them.
Sure.
And then I want you to have a good faith conversation, because we are not going to bring this country together, of which is actually our goal here as part of the MAGA movement, which is why we have an open mic. If you go around accusing people as if we're following Charlie Manson.
You just did the same thing to me.
Well, in all fairness, I said, if this is the standard of our dialogue right now, the Democrat Party is far more of a cult than the Republican Party. That is not a contention that I throw around lightly, but it is, you satisfy the requirements way more than the MAGA movement does.
You haven't asked me enough questions to know that.
Well, that has nothing to do with what I've said.
Yes, it does.
I mean,
you haven't asked me if I would blindly follow some leader of the Democratic Party, which is no, I would only follow if I do the in-depth research of an unbiased source to get my information, and then I base my opinion off of that.
Fair enough. Can you give me an example of an unbiased source?
I mean, like Mayo Clinic, or just like any EDU source of college information.
I'll end this. If that's your idea of a biased source.
Off the top of my head.
I would encourage you to dig deeper and be more of a free thinker.
And I will, and I am a free thinker. And I grew up in a conservative household. And once I left my parents and their beliefs, and I moved to college in a very conservative state, I actually become more progressive.
Okay, and so how is your relationship with your parents?
I mean, it's fine. We don't agree on most things, but...
Wait, so they didn't kick you out for having a different opinion? They're terrible cult members. Wait, they still love you for who you are, and do they pay your tuition?
Nope.
Okay,
I pay my own tuition. I pay everything on my own.
Well, good. Then they're even better parents. They make you pay for your own stuff. The point, so you can't even point to your own family as being part of a cult. They still love you. They still talk to you.
I would go as far to say, and if they're watching this, I do believe that my parents are in a cult. But
Do you understand how damaging that is? To go around to say the people who raised you and nurtured you and brought you into the world that you're a cult because some professor told me the definition of a cult in an anthropology course.
Nope. You're wrong.
All right. Thank you.
It was nice to talk to you, though.
Thank you for your time.
其实邪教这个定义本质上很主观。对我来说呢，邪教有一个最简单的判断方式，那就是不论你加入的是一个宗教或者是一个团体组织，你只要看这个团体组织或这个宗教里头，它有没有让你跟你的家人更疏离，好，这就是一个最准的判断依据。因为任何一个组织或是宗教，如果他想要掌控你，想要你付诸信任，是大过于你跟你自己家人的关系的，也就是他不惜劝你灌输你观念，好使得你跟家人之间产生不信任或者是破裂关系的话，那么我认为这属于一个最清楚的邪教标准，因为他把你从家庭里孤立出来的时候，他可以更好的来掌控你。那为什么？很简单来讲，就是因为家人其实是最能影响你的人嘛。所以这也是为什么过去民主党的政策主张，其实太多地方反而更像是个邪教，因为他们在灌输孩子下一代观念，更多的来使得孩子对于原生家庭的父母感到怀疑，感到不信任，甚至进而认为父母是迫害他们性别认同的人。这样的做法呢，到最后你可以看到，就是社会如果否认掉了最基本的父母与孩子这个亲密的天生血缘的关系，而失去了父母可以给孩子的教养权利的时候，那么社会的问题只会更多，并不会更少。当然，你可以说，可是也有很不幸或者说很不理想的家庭，有非常差劲的父母，这个我也完全承认。但是这仍然是特例，特例永远不可能高过通例。你不能说因为有非常不尽责的父母，所以孩子的出生都应该立刻跟父母脱离关系，或者是我们应该要削弱家庭的功能与角色，交给政府或者说交给学校来决定一切，这是不可能的。因为任何一个人，他从出生开始，他就注定了他的亲密关系一定是跟家人最紧密，所以家人之间在先天本能上来讲，也应该是最爱他们的那一群人。这也是为什么我们该改变的是父母看孩子的眼光，也该改变的是孩子看父母的眼光。旧约圣经的马拉基书最后一卷书说到，当上帝来那日子的时候，他要使父亲的心回转向儿女，儿女的心回转向父亲。这个在美国 Mega 团体，其实大家并不会单纯的只因为川普就把他视为是唯一的最好的标准或者是答案，其实恰恰反而是中间偏右的保守主义团体才是最多元性、包容度最高。为什么？因为每个人他都可以对于自己所谓什么是合乎上帝的公义，可以有一些不同的看法或解释。而我们彼此学习尊重这个差异的时候，我们也在学习去聆听别人一些不一样的想法。就像 Charlie 讲的，他其实是更偏向完全反堕胎的。那么在这点上面来讲，川普反而是把堕胎权交还给各个州政府，并没有施行所谓的全国反堕胎的政策。但这点 Charlie 也能够去尊重并且接受，尽管他跟川普看法不一样。就我个人而言呢，我跟大家分享一个有趣的，就是我唯一不能接受就是拥枪权这件事情。好，那当然拥枪权这个有很多可以值得探讨的点，我就不一一细说了。因为右派的小政府主义，其实人民的拥枪权跟他们的言论自由被视为是同样重要的象征，也就是这个是他们一个捍卫自己生存的权利。因为在美国殖民早期的阶段的时候，随时都有可能会遭受好比说像印第安人，或者是说自然环境当中的野兽等等随时的攻击的危机，所以拥枪权对于在美国人民早期拓荒的过程当中来讲，它跟生存是同样一样重要的一件事情。那也这就是为什么一直沿袭到至今，共和党的小政府主义始终不愿意去取消掉人民的枪支合法化。但是在我来看的话，我确实认为美国已经走到今天民主国家了，不论他们是否仍然会担心，好比说像之前一度担心这个民主党这个采用非法移民走到所谓的独裁政府的时候呢，我觉得不论会不会真的发生到那件事情，我都认为美国已经到了一个不适合再由人民持有枪支权利的一个国家社会当中了。这是我个人的看法，因为我认为这只会使得随机性的枪击事件只会层出不穷的发生。这个本质上来讲，伤害性是远远大过你一般只有持有刀械这样子的一种社会氛围。那这个是我个人并不能够认同共和党的地方，但是当然我也尊重保守主义团体里面，特别是美国人他们自己对于拥有枪支的绝对自由权利的这个看法，我也能理解。好，那所以你会发现，就如同 Charlie Kirk 跟我一样，我们并不认为在保守主义团体里头是一个单调只有一元化的一个声音，相反的其实是更多元。可是我们会更理性的去看待彼此认知的背景的来源差异，恰恰反而对应到只要非左即右的 这种左派文化里头来讲的话，其实左派走的路线才是更极端、更极权的一种模式。好，那么你认为哪一个会比较像邪教呢？就由观众你自己在下方留言告诉我，让我知道你更多的想法吧。那最后在影片结尾，我们一起来看一看，居然只因为戴上 Mega 的帽子呢，就在地铁上被一个左派的妇女呢咆哮追着打的画面。从这个影片当中，一起好好来想一想，到底哪一边看起来更像邪教吧。我们这边是超级神队友，我们就下部影片再见，拜拜。
That's why he won. Because people like you. That's why he won. That is why he won. Because of people like you who need to stop it. Let him live.
Bro, just like, bro, chill, bro.
You're okay with that? He's a racist.
I'm okay. How can I be
He's a
racist?
racist.
Okay with it.
If you
I'm
fucking
so
voted
okay
for
with
Trump,
it.
you're a
I'm so
racist.
He's so wrong.
He's a racist.
How can I be racist?
No, he's not. Leave him alone.
Doesn't watch the news.
You realize he was the
I'm
Democrat.
highly educated.
Oh, are you? Then why are you wearing that hat?
Ever since it's going up for I don't know how long, the Democrats been running New York since who knows how long. But then Trump comes in and just takes over.
Alright, well, this is my style. I hope you enjoy the hat.
Oh, she's like an attacker. She just